Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Right. I'm Dr. Obiora Obiagu. I'm a GP trainer down in Bristol. Can I politely ask if we can switch our cameras on, just so we know who we are speaking with? Yeah, I know there are lots of us, but I think it will be useful if we know exactly who's in the meeting and who's part of us. And yeah, cool. Thank you to those who are switching their cameras on. Then if you can mute yourselves, but of course, when it's question time and you need to ask a question, yeah, just give us a shout or put your hand up and we will, hand over to you to ask your questions. Right, good. So thank you everyone for making our time from our busy schedules to be here tonight. So if we recall what we saw from the poster, we kept it short and simple, the SCA examination, and we called it an introduction. So just to let us know, we called it an introduction because it's, it'll just be, I'll say, a brief insight into what the SCA examination is. Of course, the SCA examination, if you want to talk about it, then that will literally take at least 2 days, 2 days of proper, classroom discussions regarding it. So we can see this, or we can take this as an, just an insight, and we will surely have a second part, and maybe we may even have a third part to this discussion about the SCA examination, which is which will be rolled out by the RCGP later this year. Can we all mute our?
Sorry.
No worries. So kindly check. So we have 2 minutes before we begin. Yeah. So just housekeeping. First is, we will appreciate it if we have our cameras on. No need to be shy. These meetings are good for networking. We all know networking is seriously underrated. When you speak with people who've been through or who are going through the path you are, you will definitely learn, and seeing each other, I think it makes sense to know who we're speaking with. And of course, we know Zoom is not 100% secure. So when we have an outsider who shouldn't be part of the meeting, those coordinating the meeting can easily get the person out of this meeting.
Okay.
And of course, the meeting is being live streamed. So we have to ask everyone politely to be aware of GDPR rules. I know someone asked about recording, but I think the live stream should take care of that, because we have a YouTube channel where you can go back to watch the video again. And I think YouTube will be sort of better rather than recording it in Zoom. I hope I'm right, Harrison.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Good. So tonight we have 3 speakers.
How does this look like?
Right. Can we mute ourselves, please? I know some of us are excited, but kindly remember to mute yourselves. Yeah, but of course, if you wish to say anything, just put your hand up. We have the emojis to ask for you to have the floor, and we will let you. So tonight we have 3 very experienced GPs with us. So first is Dr. Henry Akintunde. He's an SCA examiner, previously RCA examiner. And he's also a TPD. So they will be here tonight. They will give us an insight into what the SCA examination is all about. And if we have questions much later, you will be able to ask all your questions, or rather some of the questions, because when we meet again, we will continue. Yeah. Right, so can we mute ourselves, please? I know when you log into Zoom, it by default for most of us leave you, speaking freely. Yeah. So the next speaker we have is Dr. Ola Fajimi. He's a TPD as well. He's well experienced with training and issues relating to trading. And the third, but last not but the least speaker is Dr. Oenyo Okonkwo, who's a GP trainer and also an SCA examiner. So these are GPs who have been put through to the test. Just for you to be able to be an RCGP examiner, you would have, taken the exam. That's part of the preparation. Right, so it's 1946. Before I hand the floor to them, the first speaker will be Dr. Henry. I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Dr. Obiora Obiogwu. I'm a GP trainer down in Bristol. So if you're in Bristol area, feel free to give me a shout. It's always good. I love meeting people. We learn from each other. That's part of the reasons I became a trainer. I'm also a GP teacher affiliated with the University of Bristol. So I usually teach 50 medical students. Right. So I'll leave the space and Dr. Henry, yeah, please, if you can take over now and we shall begin.
Thank you very much, Obi. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. This presentation, I'll be doing it jointly with Dr. Okonkwo. So she'll be joining me for some of the other bits. I don't know if Ola is around yet, because I think he wanted to do a quick timeline.
Oh yes, I'm here.
Okay. If it's okay, Obi, is it okay for Ola to start? I think his bits nicely
Yeah,
just
it's fine.
links
The
into
three of
ours.
you are the speakers. I'm just the moderator, so whatever you say is fine by me.
Okay, so Ola, I'll hand over the floor to you then.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Akintunde. My name is Ola. I'm one of the TPDs in the Coventry area. I'm also a GP tutor with Warwick University. I will just be taking us through how we got to this point where we are talking about SCA. We'll go right from the journey from CSA right to SCA. Can I have my slide shared, Dr. Bera?
I was on mute. Yeah.
Yes. Can I have my slide shared so everyone can see?
Yes. Have you sent it to me so I can?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So just hang on.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. It looks like it's quite large because it says I cannot. Yeah, but are you able to share your screen?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I think you can share straight from yours.
Okay, let me get that full screen. Sorry for that. Oh, sure. So I will need to be made
the host,
host first.
Or co-host. Yep. So I'll find you and make you a co-host, so you'll be able to. Right, just hang on. Let me find you. We have a good number of folks waiting to join the meeting. I'm just letting them in and. Right. Yeah, I think you're now co-host. Oops, sorry. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong person. Yeah, just right, so that's you. Good. Yep, you're now co-host.
Lovely. So I can share my screen now. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, clearly.
Lovely. Oh, I apologize for the slight glitch. So The SCA stands for the Simulated Consultation Assessments. As we all know, it is the second part of the RCGP exams alongside the AKT. And with the workplace-based assessment, it forms the third part of the set criteria that is required for CCT. Why do we need to take this exam? It's to assess a trainee's ability to integrate and apply clinical, professional, and communication skills that are appropriate for general practice, whilst showing that they are following the principles of good medical practice as set out by the GMC. And the first thing is that patients are kept safe and that the GP is adaptable in treating various conditions, that the GP can appropriately manage the risk and medical complexity, as well as the uncertainty that comes with seeing these patients, and that the GPs can exhibit appropriate behavior, attitude, and concerns for their patients. So this exam basically tries to mimic the working condition an average GP can expect in an average day. So it used to be CSA, then the pandemic struck. Last CSA was done in March of 2020. At the time, COVID cases were rising, even among college staff, candidates, role players, and examiners. Those of us that had the opportunity to be part of the CSA will agree that the condition under which the examinations were done were not conducive in such a pandemic. So at the time, government was considering imposing travel restrictions. And of course, we bought the main load then.
I hope I won't disturb you. I'm joining the meeting, but I don't want to disturb you.
In addition to the safety issues. So RCA was introduced July of 2020 as an emergency measure in response to the pandemic. The transition was done in very record time. It enabled many GP trainees to CCT despite the ongoing pandemic. It's a very valid exam with real patients, really reliable, with really high G coefficient. The RCA did give power of the case selection to the candidates. It also did create this sense that the examination day was spread over the recorded period rather than just one single day of the exam. So what that meant is that the tension was reduced. It meant that even whilst you're recording, you were doing the examination, but it didn't come without its own problems. It added extra workload in case selection. Certain areas, for instance, suffered some challenges with their candidates getting certain amount of cases. Then it was difficult initially fitting in real life issues on trained patients into a 10 minutes consultation, and the RCGP promptly increased the consultation time for the RCA from 10 minutes to 12 minutes. It also created a data management dilemma because all of a sudden, many trainees now had consent forms of patients, they had recordings of patients on their phones, and this was a big problem. Now, the last RCA is in September of 2023 rather, and that's only for candidates who will be retaking the exam. So because of the myriad of problems, there was a quick shift to want to replace the RCA with an hybrid exam. And here comes the SCA. It was approved by the GMC in January of 2023. It had inputs for well over 3,000 stakeholders, from college members to GMC, staff, to examiners, to trainees, to GPs, to to a large number of people. So several tester exams have been held. Some are still to happen. The advantage it brings is that it's going to bring a less preparatory burden because the trainee doesn't need to select the case anymore. But it's going to come with more opportunities because there are going to be 9 sittings in a year. So it's a hybrid, like I mentioned, trying to combine the gains of the CSA and the gains of the RCA into one single exam. Results are to be available much earlier. And the fact that the exams are going to be done in candidates' own surgery means that the delivery is closer to home. No one needs to travel to the RCGP headquarters in London to take the exam. It's going to involve trained and calibrated role players, which means that the moment you say the things the role players have been told, then they will give you the appropriate answer to them. And examinations will not be tested. So this will mean that changes will need to be made to the workplace-based assessment to accommodate examination. A few things haven't changed though. The blueprint still remains the same. And now every trainee is to be tested on the same competency in standardized cases, just like the CSA. So candidates are to be assessed by different examiners on every case. The role players, as I mentioned, are professional actors who are going to be specially trained, tightly calibrated, and standardized on their cases. All role players and all examiners will be trained as per EDI. So that's sort of the journey so far. The summary is that the SCA is going to combine the gains of the CSA and the RCA. Like any exam, early preparation with role play is essential, especially role play trying to mimic the examination condition, because this exam is going to be a remote consultation exam. So the thing is, we still need to get the basics right, which Dr. Henry and Dr. Wenyi will be telling us more about. We still need to get the right consultation skills. Those have not changed. They are still the same thing. And to focus on the case at a time. It's going to be 12 minutes, 3 minutes break. Focus on what you're dealing with right now. Don't focus on the previous case, which has gone, which you have absolutely no control over. So essentially, that's the journey from CSA to SCA. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was very, very useful and wonderful. Yeah, so you can unshare. Oh, sorry. No, yeah, you can keep your screen. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I find it very useful to, keep hearing about the SCA because as a trainer, I mean, of course, I'm not trained to assess trainees on the SCA, but it's important that me as a trainer know what the SCA is about so I can guide my trainees. So even speaking from a trainer point of view, I've found this very useful. And like I said to everyone at the onset, this is only an introduction. Yeah, there's so much to the SCA that we literally cannot cover it tonight. But this is like, when you go for wine tasting, you have a taste of this, a taste of that. Then you go home and think, so which one? Do I come back? Do I buy a bottle of this? So that's what we are doing tonight. But this very compact presentation is fully loaded. So I'll just check with Dr. Konkwo and Dr. Henry and Ola as well. Is it okay if we take a few questions? Because it's 8 p.m. I think we are good on time. Maybe we spend the next, say, 5-7 minutes. Folks who are also part of the webinar can ask questions to Dr. Ola, and you take the questions, answer as much as we can, then we move on to Dr. Henry and Dr. Okonkwo. So if it's fine by the house, we move on.
Yeah.
That's not to answer Tolani now.
Remember, so yeah, it's good. We've muted everyone, so be mindful of that. As much as we trust everyone we can see here, we don't want to hear your personal conversations because it's still personal. Remember, GDPR rules matter a lot to us and the RCGP. So right, what's the agreement? Do we take a few questions? Then Dr. Henry will take over from, say, maybe 7 or 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. So if you have questions,
That's fine.
just put your hand up and then we will take it from there and leave the space for you.
Okay, I wonder if it's possible for us to just go through the formal presentations. At least that would then, allow them time to kind of collect themselves.
Okay, yeah, that's fine by me. Yeah, perfect. Good. So if that's fine by the house, then I'll leave the space for Dr. Henry to then Dr. Lau, stop your screen sharing. Yeah, so someone else has mentioned it. Why don't we take the questions at the end? That's absolutely fine. Right. Yeah, so we move on. We are good on time. So we see what we achieve and then take questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Obiora, and thank you, Ola, for that presentation. So this presentation is going to be jointly done by myself and Dr. Okonkwo. My name is Henry Akitunde. I'm a CSA RCA examiner and will also be examining the SCA amongst my other roles. So it's an introduction, and we're just going to tell you as much as we know at this point. There are a few things that are still unfolding, but the main structure of the exam is sort of set to a large extent, and that's what we'll be going through today. So this is the agenda. The bits will cover the introduction to this SCA all the way to the key dates. I'm going to play a video now. I just need to make sure that my sound is on. So this is just a summary video of what the essay is about.
We're really excited to be launching the new simulated consultation assessment in November 2023. The format of the exam will be essentially 12-minute consultations, and there'll be 12 of those, and then with that there'll be a 3-minute opportunity for the trainee to read the notes.
I think we found post-pandemic, we are actually as GPs working more in a hybrid way. We are doing remote consultations, both video and telephone consultations in our day-to-day lives anyway. It is a new way of working, and that's reflected really nicely in the exam.
We've selected the exam platform primarily because of the excellent candidate and user experience that it brings.
It was very easy to use, it was really clear in terms of the time frames and the timings that we were allowed.
The candidate will be on screen with a trained and professional role player. That trained professional role player will essentially be playing the case of a patient.
So here, all candidates will get the same selection of patients on a particular day and at least the same competencies being tested in any one diet of the exam.
The new examination will be delivered in the trainee's GP surgery.
Candidates can then sit the exam from a familiar environment. They're not having to come all the way down to London with the stress of possibly staying overnight, and that comes with a cost as well, both like financially and personal life.
I think I will feel more relaxed in my surgery because I've been working at the surgery for a while now, and if it's in the same room that I always do my consults, then we're better to conduct an examination.
The big positive of this new exam is that there will be 9 diets of the exam within a year, and there'll also be the 12-month reservation period, which will allow people to plan and also manage their time a bit better within that year.
I'm really excited about this. I'm so pleased that we're doing it. I think that it will produce safe, independent practitioners for our patients, and being able to do it in their own premises as well, I think is just fantastic.
Okay, so that's the high-level summary of what the essay is about. I'm just now going to go into that a little bit more. So the SCA format would be one where there'll be 12 cases, unlike 13 cases that we have with the RCA right now. Each case would last 15 minutes. So 12 minutes to run the case, 3 minutes to read the information about the case. The case information will be provided in the reading time. So all the information you need for that case is provided in the reading time, and you get 3 minutes to be able to do that. Then these cases, unlike the RCA, will be performed by role players, and they are people that would be fully calibrated and standardized so that they deliver the same level of performance to all candidates that they are acting for or role playing for. And it doesn't matter whether there are 3 or 4 people role playing the same case, they would all have been calibrated to be able to deliver the same level of performance, just like we used to have with the CSA. The cases can relate to either patients or their carers or a parent or other health or social care workers. So like Ola said, it's going to very closely mimic what you do in everyday surgery. So there'll be times you speak to patients, there will be times you're speaking to their carers or parents, there will be times you're speaking to like the district nurse about a housebound patient. So the cases can be any mix of that. Physical examinations will not be assessed within the SCA. So this is one thing you don't need to prepare for. Physical examination will not be assessed because it's going to be physically impossible. The exam is delivered remotely, so you won't be able to do any physical examination. Instead, from August this year, the requirements for SEPs in the workplace-based assessment is going to change to include some more examinations that you need to be able to demonstrate competence in from August this year. So that's to take account of the fact that the SCA is not going to have physical examinations. So the cases are, so this is to my right-hand side is what the provisional exam time is like. So in a typical day, 2 circuits would run. There'll be a circuit in the morning, there'll be another one in the afternoon. The one from the morning will run from around 9 a.m. to 12:40, and the RCGP is allowing an extra 40 minutes thereabouts, just in case any cases need to be rerun. And that's the same for the afternoon circuit. So we don't envisage that problem, but we're making allowance just in case that needs to happen. So not to panic, not to worry. If a case doesn't run well because of technical glitches, there's opportunity to rerun it, okay? The cases are going to cover these curriculum areas to my right. So patient less than 19 years old, gender, reproductive, sexual health, including LGBTQ, long-term condition, older adults, mental health, and the list goes on and on. These are things you'll be quite familiar with because these are things you see in everyday surgery. So these are the competencies that the case would be testing you against in this sort of curriculum areas, as it were. A combination, the cases will be a combination of video consultations and telephone/audio consultations. So on average, a mix of about 9 to 3, 9 video consultations to 3 telephone audio consultations. Obviously, that's not a rule that will always be stuck to. There may be days that it will be 8-4 or 10-2, but averagely around 9-3. And these cases will represent the prevalence of conditions that we see in the UK. And they will reflect also the diversity of the UK population. So I think the RCGP's goal really is to make you feel that although you're doing an exam, you might as well be doing a surgery at your practice, because the sort of patients you'll be seeing, the sort of cases you'll be seeing are those that you would normally see in your everyday practice. There is no change to the curriculum. The curriculum blueprint remains the same, so you still have to know the curriculum. But one of the other things that this was debated, but I think the conclusion right now is that it will be a closed book examination. So essentially, you won't be able to look into any book, as it were. So that's one bit that will feel different from what you do in surgery, where you can go on patient.co.uk and all of that, but you won't be able to do that here. Okay, the exam will be delivered remotely on a platform called OSLA. So you will sit the exam in your local surgery via this online platform. There might be cases where the surgery might not be adequate. From the RCGP's consultation, majority of surgeries, well over the 95% mark or so, are adequate for the purposes of the SCA. So very rarely would you need to go and do it elsewhere. But if that's the case, be sure that it wouldn't be a practice too far from you. The RCGP has been working with practices to ensure that accredited training practices meet with the requirements. And from the presentation from the RCGP itself, in terms of technical requirements, more than 98% of the practices have met the technical requirements so far. So including things like download speed, upload speed, and all of that. So there's no concern, because for me, that was my biggest worry, to say, I don't even use my office's Wi-Fi. I just use my mobile data because I don't trust the Wi-Fi. So I'm like, has the RCGP checked this sort of things? They have checked. And from the practices that they have checked with, more than 98% of practices already have meet those requirements to be able to host the exam. The platform is one that is very intuitive. One that just allows you to do very little other than just focusing on your exam. So the idea is that you come on the day and you don't have to worry about the IT side, because it's quite intuitive and you can just focus on the exam. There will be an online invigilator that will be monitoring candidates. Those ones will be the ones to do the identity checks at the beginning and keep an eye on how things are going. And then there'll be opportunity ahead of the exam for you to orientate yourself with the platform. You'll be able to reserve your exam up to 12 months ahead. That's the plan. There'll be 9 diets in the year. Once you book a date, though, you cannot hold more than 1 date down at a time. So once you book a date, that's it, unless you decide to change that date for another time. But at any point in time, you can only reserve 1 date. And when it's about 6 to 7 weeks to the exam, then you are given a link to move from reservation to actually booking the exam. The results would be delivered faster. So all that anxiety about I've written the exam and you're waiting 2 months or more to get the results will not be there. The plan is that you're getting your results in the same month that you do the exam, at most the beginning of the next month, as it were. First sitting will be November this year, and you can see what sort of the projected capacity is. So 9 diets a year. I think the only times there wouldn't be exam would be in December, in July, and in August. Every other month in the year, there will be exams that you'll be able to sit. So enables you to plan and gives you a lot more opportunity to be able to sit the exam when you want to sit it. This is just talking about the examination fee. The main thing to say is that the SCA is cheaper than the CSA, but more expensive than the RCA. And that's taking account of the resources. With the RCA, you don't pay patients to do the recording. Here, you're going to be paying role players. You have a dedicated IT platform. You're still going to pay examiners. So it does seem fair. But I think the thing to say is that the RCGP doesn't make a dime from this. All of the money goes to running the exam. Marking and results, the aim is that the exams are done on specific days. They are recorded and the marking happens another day. So examiners will be marking at a completely different time from when you're doing the exam. Each case and the examiners marking that case will be carefully calibrated. So all the examiners marking a particular case are carefully calibrated to make sure that they are all marking in a standardized way. again, we all have been trained to be able to make sure that we mark exactly what we see and are fair in terms of giving the marks. Now, you have been aware from the CSA days all the way to RCA that it's been 3 domains. It's still going to be 3 domains, but they are changing slightly. It's now going to be data gathering and diagnosis. So it just used to be data gathering only. Now, diagnosis that used to be under clinical management is moving to data gathering. Now, clinical management remains clinical management, but there is an emphasis on medical complexity, because increasingly that's what we're doing. We're managing medical complexity, we're managing more uncertainty. The exam would reflect that. So, and then there's the third part. Instead of interpersonal skills, this is called relating to others. So the idea is to make it a bit broader, beyond just the question of that we're looking at your interpersonal skills. We're looking generally at how you are able to relate and connect with other people in the context of a consultation. So your mark would not be determined by your performance in certain specific cases. There will be no cases that you must pass in order to pass. It would all be about your performance across the whole of the assessment at the end of the day. And as part of this, you're going to receive your scores in each domain, in every case that you were assessed on. And you'll be given additional feedback in the areas that you failed. So to my right, you can see this person scored this in data gathering. You can see all the pass, the fails, the clear fails there, the scores they got. So you're going to know your marks for each domain, and you get additional feedback for the domains where you haven't done well. I'm going to move on very quickly. The grades are still, the way the marks are awarded still remain the same as they are now in terms of clear pass, pass, fail, and clear fail. And the standard is that of a newly qualified independent GP, because that's the level at which we consider someone to be safe. That's the level that once you've passed your exam, we've got no hold on you anymore. You're free to start practicing. So we need to know that you can practice at that level. So to pass is that you sufficiently demonstrate the competencies at that level. Clear pass would be above that level, and anything below that level is fail or clear fail. And there are still the standard descriptors for data gathering and diagnosis. So this is what you need to do to demonstrate a pass, is that you're able to systematically, and I think systematically is important there, to gather and organize relevant and targeted information. And then the ability to adopt a structured and informed approach to problem solving. Those are the things that passing candidates should be able to demonstrate. When it comes to clinical management and medical complexity, is the ability to be able to formulate a safe management, a safe and appropriate management option. And we're looking at things like, are you able to prioritize? Can you provide some level of continuity of care? Are you able to manage time well? Are you able to give the patient information on self-management? And then there's also the ability to demonstrate commitment to providing optimum care, both in the short and long term. And when it comes to relating to others, we're looking at not just your ability to interact with the patient, we're looking at you being ethically aware, in terms of, are you recognizing things like protected characteristics, peculiarities that different cultures and persons bring, and how that can influence the consultation? Are you showing your ability to communicate in a person-centered way? And then are you able to show initiative, flexibility, ability to negotiate with the patient to be able to reach a shared understanding? These are the things we'll be looking at under relating with others. Okay, how can you prepare? So this is where the rubber hits the road. The way to prepare for the exam, like Ola said, is that the basics still matter. At the end of the day, whether it's CSA or RCA or SCA, it's still testing the ability to consult. So the more familiar you are with consulting, the easier the SCA would be. Like I said, the goal is that we want it to be like you're in surgery on the day. So if you are not the type that is regular in surgery, then you're going to struggle. So keep seeing patients, keep doing consultations, getting feedback and using it to improve your consultations. That's how you're going to be able to prepare yourself well for this exam. You need to cover as much of the curriculum as you can with exposure. Although the SCA hasn't started, I can bet my $1 million based on my experience from CSA and RCA, that at the end of the day, the main issue is still going to be knowledge. It's still going to be the knowledgeable candidates that will pass. The ones that are not knowledgeable, that don't do the work, it's going to affect their clinical management. So you need to cover as much of the curriculum as you can and use it in everyday practice so that it's already become part of your style in using it. You want to map your consultations against the workplace-based assessment court requirements that is required for a safe consultation. Because as you will see in those marking criteria for the domain, they are closely aligned to what is there in the consultation observed tool in court. So one way to prepare is to get assessed quite frequently in terms of court and make sure that you're scoring well by the standard of court. If you're doing that, you're likely going to do well in the SCA consultations. Also conduct joint surgeries with your trainer. So, and by joint surgeries, I'm not just talking about them observing you and giving feedback. There's a place for that, but also you've got things to learn from them, okay? So maybe you see 2 cases, let your trainer see 1 case, learn from them. How are they able to run a consultation in 10, 12 minutes? What skills and techniques are they bringing to bear? How are they dealing with those very difficult requests from patients or patients that are themselves difficult? You learn those skills sometimes by just observing people who are skilled at doing these things, doing them, and you can pick 1 or 2 things that you can add to your own consultation. Now with the RCA, this next point, we saw it go completely out of the window, and that is that trainees stopped practicing in groups. You need to start doing that now. We used to do that with the CSA. This needs to come back. You need to go to like Bradford VTS website, get those cases. Somebody role plays the doctor, another person role plays the patient, other people are using the marking scheme, and you give each other feedback. You run it again, using that feedback to improve yourself. That's how you're going to perfect your consultation. That's how sometimes your peers are much more brutal than your trainer, and that's what you need. So you need to start that study group again. And you should ideally aim to be consulting at 15 minutes a few months to the exam, okay? If you consult at 15 minutes, you should be fine, because 15 minutes includes the time you read the patient's notes and that you type up your notes. So you should be very comfortable with finishing in 12 minutes if you're already consulting at 15 minutes. Okay, just some dates to be aware. There are already sample cases on the RCGP website. They've been there since May 2023. There's already information on reasonable adjustment. Candidate guides are there now. There are other bits. There's been an introduction to the SCA for trainer in June. There's now open, I understand this opened last week, where you can join the RCGP webinar. I don't know if it's still open, but if it is, and you haven't got yourself on it, it's a good idea to get yourself on it. Even if you can't make that time, if you register, the recording will be sent to you. So, and then note the other dates that there's still going to be more information to come out, and join the webinar. The better informed you are about this exam, the better you'll be able to prepare for it. And November, we go live, the first SCA diet. So in summary, the SCA will replace the RCA from November, 9 diets per year. You can reserve up to 12 months in advance. A familiar setting, it's going to be your surgery, may even be the consulting room you use regularly. There's already, the RCGP has done a lot of work to make sure that the case bank is, so new cases have been written, old CSA cases have been modified to suit the SCA format. At the end of the day, the exam will be such that you'll be able to do and finish it in that time. Now, so this is important. Unlike the RCA, where you are usually having a case and you say, I'll bring you in, I'll examine you, and depending on what I find, I'll be able to treat you. There'll be no such case in the SCA, okay? If an exam is going to be important to that, the examination findings will already be provided for you. So there'll be no case that you would not be able to definitively manage because you still have to do exams. If you see yourself going down that pathway, then know that you're missing a trick. Okay, so this is going to be one of the main differences, is that you will be able to finish any case that you have properly without needing an examination input to change what you're going to do. Okay, and then it's going to be remote assessment. There'll be no need to travel, and hopefully we have an exam that is now pandemic proof. Thank you for listening. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Okonkwo now.
Okay, thank you very much, Henry. Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Oni, Dr. Okonkwo. And like Henry, I'm also a college examiner. I'm a trainer, obviously, and I'm also a tutor. I teach for both year 5 and year 1 for University of Birmingham. I think before I start, I'm going to say a few things. First of all, thank you, Henry and Ola. Wonderful presentations. Can I just say, video yourself. You need to see yourself consult. I've done a lot of videos, especially over the pandemic, because I did a lot of COVID work for my ICS. I can't watch myself because I'm traumatized from the time I did videos. I'm completely traumatized. But for you, it is so important that you see yourself, because when you see yourself, you can see the quirks that you have. We all have them. There are different ways I say things. There are ways Henry says things. You are you, because what we tend to see is you go trying to be somebody else, and then you become very formulaic. Watch yourself consult, because then you can pick out the things that are good about your consultation, and you can see those things that you're quite like, I don't really like how I say that. How else can I say this? Then either by sitting in with your trainer or watching your peers consult, you pick up those how will I say them, techniques and tricks that you can then go and practice on your patient, and then see how it lands, and then you go and watch yourself again and see whether it works until you find that thing that is you. Because at the end of the day, we want to see you. We don't want you to see Henry version of you. No, we want to see you, because that is who you are day to day. And when you start trying to emulate somebody else, it never really works. So I would suggest, please, 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 this is really important. Video yourself and watch it. Second thing, this is not an open book exam, but really, if you hear anything that we've said tonight, just hear, this is more it's supposed to be an examination of your consultation skills, but because it's not open book, you have to have the knowledge to be able to do the exam. So I would say to you, go back to reading your NICE guidelines. When you see a case, you write down what we used to say to people during CSAs, write down the list of cases you've seen in a day. When you go home, just read around them, because you've done the AKT. We've tested your knowledge. We know your knowledge is good. But the problem is, as the days go by, you forget things. And because you forget things, when you then come to manage it, you don't have the option of, let me open NICE CKS. No, there wouldn't be anything like that, because you know the invigilator that Henry was talking about, actually that invigilator is able to look at what is going on at the back. They can actually check where you are in the country. They can check. You cannot say, oh, my internet dropped out, that's why I didn't. No, they can check your internet signal. There are checks and balances. So they would really proper invigilate you. So you can't have access to the usual resources that you would have during your consultation. So I would say to you, start now. Every day you see cases, write them down. When you go home, go through the guidelines again, find out how you manage them in your area so that you have the medical knowledge. And then give each other, get honest feedback. the problem we have sometimes with our trainers or sometimes with our peers is that we become defensive because we are a community that we don't know feedback. That is not part of our education. We haven't been taught to either ask or receive feedback. And feedback for us becomes criticism. And when people feel, when they feel that you are not good with feedback, they start telling you what you want to hear. That will not help you at all. You need honest feedback if you're going to improve. So I would say to you, if you're somebody that doesn't really like feedback, I'm so sorry. You've got to learn. You have to know how to improve, and you have to be somebody that is open to receive feedback. So normally at the beginning, when I start working with my trainees, I say to them, what kind of person are you? Do you want me to tell you the truth, or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? It's up to them. If they say I should tell them the truth, I will tell them Niger style. This is where you're going wrong. This is what you need to do. But if I feel that they are not the sort that I will start doing my own sandwich for them. But well, you did this well, but you didn't do this. Oh, fantastic, well done. That's up to you. You don't learn from that. So you need to get honest feedback, please. Every month, you must have to go to the college website and read everything they've put out in the SCA. If you've not registered, please go and register, because then they'll be sending you updates all the time. If things come out, there is a registration button on the college website. Just register. Every single time something comes up, you get it. But you can't go to a battle if you don't know the battle, the plan. You must have a plan to go to a battle, isn't it? But then we have people turning up for all these exams without actually reading the rules. You must read the rules. You must understand the rules. I've heard some of you say, oh, I'll register for the exam. You know, when it gets there, if I'm not ready, I'll change it. The college penalizes people for doing that. So make sure you understand all the rules around the exam itself, what happens on the day, what happens before the day, what happens afterwards, so that you know what you're putting yourself in for. Spend that time, spend the weekend, take out, even if it's 2 hours every weekend, update yourself on what is going on. And then I think that's about all I need to say to you before I go on to talk to you about what I'm supposed to be talking to you about today, which is consultations. So first of all, I have to credit Professor Roger Neighbor, who does this course, because one of the roles that I have is I'm one of the examiners who work on the RCA Midlands. At the moment, I'm the honorary secretary for the Midlands faculty. So, and I'm also the council rep. So as part of it, and part of being an examiner, I attend and help Robin Simpson run the RCA Midlands. So for those of you who haven't attended, I would absolutely recommend this particular course to you. It's run by college examiners. And if anything you don't know about consultation skills that Roger Neighbor cannot teach you, then honestly, that thing does not exist. So I would say go on the college website. You can only book it through RCGP. So go on the college website. If you can get on that particular course, the money comes out of your study leave budget. It's a course that is well going, because on the first day you learn about consultations. On the second day, we college examiners will examine you. And sometimes you actually have the pleasure of being examined by the chief examiner, Professor Whitnell. And then on the third day, we examiners also give you feedback on your performance. That way, honestly, when you finish that course, you cannot get worse in your consultation. You can only get better. So I would say to you, if you've not ever attended that one, that's a good one to attend. Be careful with the kind of courses you go for, because we hear a lot of, in fact, some people had already put in courses long even before the SCA came out. We don't know where that is from. It's called RCA Midlands SCA course. So it's run by RCA Midlands. It should be SCA Midlands now, I guess, because we used to be called RCA Midlands, but now I'm sure we're called SCA Midlands. Okay, so how do you do a consultation is what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. Next slide, please, Henry. Right, so when we look at doing a consultation, I like to think about a consultation in terms of 3 parts. You have the first part, which is the patient's part. You have the second part, which is the doctor's part. And you have the third part, which is the shared part. So when you talk about the patient's part, that part is about getting the story, hearing from your patients. I know that a lot of you do triage, and part of your triage, they will put Mr. Block's headache. can I just encourage you to maybe ask your surgery not to be doing that? Because what tends to happen, and we see a lot, is when they put that headache, you then go into your consultation with that headache at the back of your mind, and you don't hear your patient. It then pigeonholes all the questions that you're asking and listening for, and it makes you're busy thinking, what's the next question I'm going to ask? What's the next? Instead of listening to your patient and trying to hear them, your mind is full of all the questions that you want to hear them about, tell them or ask them about the headache. So I will suggest to you that you keep an open mind, because the role player, yes, he might say this or he might say that, but they have their brief, and like Henry said, there's nothing hidden. If you open your mind and actually listen and have a conversation like you would do in a normal surgery, you should be able to get the story from them. So usually we say to you, allow them that first minute, encourage them to tell you the story in their own words. Don't try to, just listen, just hear them. If you want to ask questions, ask open questions. Do not ask double questions. Hi, how can I help you? They are things that are open questions. Don't ask things like, tell me about the headache. Is it on the right side? That's a double barrel question. If I am your role player, I would answer you if it's on the right side. I will not answer you the whole thing. So if you're going to ask open questions, please ask real open questions and just allow them to talk. In fact, some people go as far as, I've seen it quite a bit, where they say, can you tell me the story in your own words? I quite like hearing that, but that is not for everybody. Just be you. Find the one that works for you. But please just ask open questions. And when they say things, because you're listening, you can hear them, you can receive it. That's what we call receiving. Somebody will say, oh, it was so bad, I was dying, I was crying. Thank you. Okay, I've heard that. So it was so bad and you were dying. You received what they've said to you. You can then use it to do what we call a two-part stare. You can then develop it. If you learn that, that helps you to pick up your cues, because you're listening, you're hearing things. When they say things that you're not sure of, you can receive it and use it to ask them more. So you said this thing, tell me more about this. You said that, tell me more about that. That way you're asking them still open questions so that they can hear you, they can tell you more about themselves. Don't medicalize it too soon. I know the moment they start thinking, you're thinking about your differentials. What can this be? What can that be? Take a brief moment. The patient's part is where you want to hear about your patient. Maybe that is the time when you think about, who is this person in front of me? Because we are very medical. But in England, we should be holistic. You should be thinking about, what is this patient's life like? This is when you can be thinking of, where do they work? Because they might say things to you like, oh, I can't go to work because of this. What is their job? Why can't they go to work because of it? How is it affecting them at work? Because these are the things that you're going to have to look after. It's not just about your pills and potions. It's about what else, what value can you add to their life? Ask about why they are worried about it. It's been going on for some time. Why now? Why have they come to you today? What is it that made them come to you today? What do they want from you? I know sometimes people have learned, oh, what are your ideas? What are your concerns? What are your... No. You have to develop your own way of asking this. If it's not something that you ask, start asking it now. Because can I tell you, if you don't ask people in England about this, that consultation is not functional. Because you need to know why they've come to you. If you don't address that thing, trust me, they're going to go away and think, this doctor does not know what he's doing because he didn't ask me what I was thinking. That headache that was cancer, that doctor did not know it because they don't know it's cancer. You must have to ask them. You need to find out from them. But the way you find out from them is, it would be in your own words. For me, I tend to ask my patients things like, so what do you think is going on here? And when you woke up today and you decided to come and see me, what did you think I was going to do for you? That is how I ask them. And it depends on the patient. It depends on my relationship with them as well. So it's good for you to develop your own ways of asking it, and not just, what are your concerns? What are you expecting? Those words don't work and they sound very formulaic. but listen to what they are trying to say to you, because sometimes they might not know how to say it to you. All you need is you might want to signpost them. So when we talk about signposting, because sometimes we want to ask things that, like if you're telling me, oh, I've got this headache, I've got this, I've got that, and I'm thinking in my mind, could this be because you went drinking yesterday and you got drunk and you woke up with a hangover? I'm not just going to in the middle, just start asking you, oh, do you drink? Do you smoke? I might just want to signpost it and say to you something like, look, sometimes we find that when people have had a bit to drink, and then you see, I'm explaining to you why, or I might say to you something like, oh, I need to ask you some intimate questions, because you don't just in the middle, I start asking them, have you had sex yesterday? Did you sleep with somebody else? There are certain things you need to kind of signpost so that the patient understands why you're asking it. But find a balance, because some people spend the whole consultation explaining. Use your signposting when it's necessary. We say, like Henry, I told you, we try to finish your data gathering by 6 minutes. It doesn't mean you will cut off your patient, because I've heard that too. I've heard people say to me, oh, I've been told that by 6 minutes, if they've not finished, cut them off. One of the things that we take is you have developed the history enough to be able to make a diagnosis. So make sure that you ask focused history. Yeah. Think to yourself, what do I need to know to be able to get a diagnosis, or to know what it, trust me, if you do this well, if you let your patient talk and let them just vomit on you everything that they are thinking is going on with them, honestly, by the time they finish, you already have your differentials in your mind. All you're just doing is prodding them with your two-part stare. So you said this, tell me a bit more about this. So you said you couldn't go to work. What kind of work? Tell me about your work. Who is at home with you? Are they supportive? Ask them real open questions so that they can tell you. You can then find out about who they are, what their life is like, what they are looking for from you today, and you can develop that history. And if you can, at that point, summarize, just say two-liners. So you said, if I understand correctly, you said X, Y, Z. Is that correct? Yeah, so that you know that you've heard what they've said and you understand it, just in case you're misunderstanding something that they're saying. Next slide, please. Now, you move on to your doctor's part. This is your part. This is the faster one, where you already have your differentials in your mind and you just want to clarify whether it's headache caused by migraine or headache caused by cancer. So you're asking your specific questions to rule things out. And most times it's a yes or no answer. If I'm thinking, okay, this headache that you've had, it might be migraine, or it might be something, or it might be tension headache. There are certain questions I'm going to ask you. How long is this headache? What does the headache feel like? It's more straightforward. Yes, no, this, that, that's it. Because that just helps you to know whether it's this or that. Okay. And this is when you do your medicine. This is when the medical side of it starts coming out. This is when you think about your red flags. Don't forget your red flag. What are those things that you know you must not miss? This is when you start thinking of, okay, are there past medical history you've not asked them? Is there a family history? Let's say you're doing a case of HRT. You can't do a HRT without doing the family history of cancers. You can't do it without family history of clots. So there are certain things that this is when you then bring in your medical knowledge. What else in my medical knowledge do I need to ask this patient? And that is why it's called the part you do the medicine. If you can, at this point, this is when you then do a full summary of what this patient has come to you for today. Because by this time, you need to have in your mind formulated your differentials. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the last part of it is now your shared part. Before you go into your shared part, remember, number one, diagnosis is now part of data gathering. So before you actually move into this part proper, you should be talking about your diagnosis. Your diagnosis has to include ruling or rule out by you thinking out loud what the patient's concerns were. That is the reason why you actually ask them this ICE that everybody thinks about. But the problem we have is sometimes we ask it, we don't even know why we're asking it. The reason why you're asking it is you want to understand your patient's health belief so that you either agree it or debunk it and tell your patient why. You know, like when you're working a maths exam, your teacher wants to see how you arrived at the answer. It's exactly the same thing. When medicine is not magic, is A equals B to C. We work out in our brains how we got to the diagnosis. You need to think aloud for your patient like that. So, Mrs. Bloggs, you said you were worried that this was a cancer of the brain. This headache was a cancer because your friend had cancer. However, hearing what you've said to me today, I don't think this is cancer, because if it was cancer, I would have expected to see X, Y, Z. But I did not hear that from anything you've said. But from what you've said to me, I think it's a migraine because you said this and this and this. And when patients tell me that, the first thing I think of is a migraine. Can you see? I have explained to the patient, this is what you thought it was. That's not what it is. And this is why. This is what I think it is. And this is why. So you're thinking out loud and the patient is following the journey. Because when they go home, which is what some people used to do, they'll say, when you go home and your husband asks you, what would you say is wrong with you? No. You don't need to do that. Because if you think aloud with the patient understands why you're thinking what you're thinking and why it's not what they came to you with. And when you get to this stage, I would say pause. When you've told somebody what you think is going on with them, give them that, even if it's 10 seconds, to take it in and ask you questions. Because what tends to happen, oh, Mrs. Bloggs, I think you're suffering from atrial fibrillation. So I am going to, no time even for the patient to understand, okay, what is atrial fibrillation? What are you on about? What are you talking about? Yeah. So when you give them a diagnosis, please pause. And if it's a diagnosis that is medical, try explaining it. What is BPPV? Yeah, benign positional paroxysmal vertigo. Explain it in a patient language. If you don't know how to explain things in patient language, please start reading patient.co.uk. Because remember, that is where we give, it's fantastic. It tells patients medical things in very simple language. You read it yourself and you understand it so that you can use it to then teach people. So I would say to you, start reading that. And then when you've given them that, you've explained that diagnosis, then you move into your management. This is when you then start thinking about how, now that we both are on the same page about what we think is going on, what are we going to do about it? Okay, you still have to think aloud. Based on what you've said, you said you wanted this. Okay, that is their expectation. You have to bring it in. However, I don't think this would work for you. What can the patient do for themselves? That is what you should be thinking of. This is when you start thinking of, okay, you know, lifestyle, you can do this or you can do this. You're taking paracetamol 3 times a day. Might it be a good idea if you increased it to 4 times a day? Okay, because I think that would help with your headache more. Yeah, so tell them what it is. Think about their expectation. Is it right? Is it wrong? And what can they do for themselves? And when you're doing things, be aware there's something called motivational interviewing. It's one thing to say to the patient, you need to do that. You need to stop smoking. You need to stop drinking. You need to do this. That is you telling them what to do. Nobody likes to be told what to do. Try and think of ways. So, Mrs. Bloggs, you said you work in the office. Can you think of ways that you can maybe increase your exercise during the day? Let them think about it. They might be able to come up with ways that they can do things themselves. Sometimes, don't forget, we still have to take responsibility and say, look, I think we should really do this. But when you come to things like changing lifestyle, things that they can have a choice, let them have a choice in how it fits into their life. So Mrs. Block, you said you eat a lot of bread. Is there any other way you can think of that we can look at your diet, or you could do to your diet to reduce how much carbohydrate that you eat? Let them think about it. That is motivational interview, rather than, okay, you need to cut your carbohydrate. You need to stop drinking. That is you telling your patient what to do. Yeah, use your motivational interviewing skills. Discuss with them. That is what then you come to, what can you yourself do as their doctor? What value are you going to add to their life? Remember, it's not just about your pills and potion. It's also about, do they need a sick note? It's also about, do they need some advice? It's also, there are so many other things. Just think, is it just about medication? It's not. There are so many other things that need to be done. So think about how you're going to enrich this patient's life. Is it that their carer needs support? Just think, what else can you do? And then what else can somebody else do? Could it be your social prescriber needs to get involved to help them with their housing? Could it be that maybe you need to refer them to the hospital? Could it be there's something else that needs to be done to help them? And then you come to make sure that each one you do, it's a conversation. You talk, you let them talk, you talk, you let them talk. Okay, make sure it is shared, not do this, do that, nobody does that. Nobody likes being, it's a question of, I think this is going to be a good idea. What do you think? Yeah, let them come back to you. You're both talking to each other, you're chatting. And that's why you need that good 6 minutes. It's not 6, we're not saying that because we want to say that. We just know that you need that time to allow them to talk and for you to talk, so that it's a meaningful shared conversation. That's the whole idea about chunk, tell them something and check that it's okay with them. And then remember your safety netting and follow up. I promise you, if their finger has not fallen off yet before they came, it's not going to fall off this minute. So you telling them, if your finger falls off, if your head falls off, if your this falls off, you're scaring your patient. It's not realistic and you know it. So don't do it, because we listening to you, I will be thinking, come, this person is scaring their patient to death. This person is not realistically thinking of what they are saying. So please make sure your safety netting is realistic and your follow-up. Someone with mechanical back pain is not going to get better tomorrow morning. So please don't say to them, if it's not better by tomorrow, come and see me. The NHS is on his knees. That tells me that you are not aware of using resources. Okay, so these are the things that will lose you marks. You might think you're saying the right thing, but in actual fact, they are not the right thing, and you know it. This is a GP consultation. What do you do in your area? When people have back pain, we say to them, do things you would normally do for at least 4 to 6 weeks. If it's not better, I'll send you to physio. Everybody knows that. Telling them to come tomorrow is not going to get you more marks, because we know that it's unrealistic. So that is where you agree your plan with the patient. So in a nutshell, just think of it like, what can this patient do? What can you, the doctor, do? And what can somebody else do for them? So that is how we look at a consultation in terms of the 3 parts: the patient's part, the doctor's part, and the shared parts. I hope that has been helpful for you. But honestly, the most important thing I would say is record yourself, work with your trainer, keep an open mind. Yeah, let them know that you're teachable. Invite feedback. As a trainer, I know my trainees who are teachable, and if they are teachable, I will move the mountains with them to make sure that they move, because I know that I can tell them what they're doing wrong. But if we feel you're not teachable, we will just teach you. I tell my trainees, I can teach you as much or as little as you want me to. So be open to feedback, be open to learn, and try and start forming your groups now and start practicing with each other. And when you're practicing, don't just have only Naija people. We like attracts like. We know that, but please try and get other people, have a mix, so that you learn together. You learn what it is to practice as GPs in England, because it's difficult. We're not taught some of these things. I start teaching my year 1 students how to do all this from second day of year 1. But we get here without having any knowledge of any of these things. And we expected to reorientate our brains and become practicing. And By the way, it's not just us. I do INR. I used to do the clinical side of INR, and even Europe consults the way we were taught to consult. So they also have been learning how to consult. English general practice is really different. So you have to learn how to consult as an English GP, and it's not going to happen in one day. So if you find yourself unsuccessful, one thing I always say to people is, you have not failed. There's nothing wrong with you. You are just learning to be an English GP. So if you're not successful the first time, you just need a little bit more time to learn it. And you just keep learning. Don't get beat and think that all the examiners are wicked, that we are devils with horns and tails. No, you just need that time to just learn. I hope that has been useful for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okonkwo. That was, or rather, that's very, very loaded. Yeah, so while you were giving that talk, yeah, it rang lots of bells and took me back memory lane. For example, how to, have conversations with the locals. And I'll tell everyone a short story. This one is about me as an ST1, when I learned how to say no without actually saying no. So of course, I feel good because I know a lot of medicine. So I saw a patient, a young girl, she was worried about a headache, got a history, and she said, look, I want to have an MRI. And I point blank said no. And she she froze, I froze as well. And me still feeling good, I railed out the reasons why, you don't meet the criteria, blah, blah, blah. And she left upset. Yeah. But luckily for me, I'll say she's a nice person, a patient, and she wanted to teach me and booked an appointment again with me the upper week. And when I saw it, I was like, in my mind, I was like, what's wrong with this patient? Coming back again for same thing. Then she politely told me how upset I made her for point blank saying no and explained why. But of course, I was open to listening. So I was like, tell me. And she said, me saying no meant I literally dismissed her feelings and every single thing. She said that yes, she went back and checked all those fancy guidelines I quoted, but and she knows I'm right, but then that's not the way. So I literally swallowed my pride. And then I told her, right, so tell me, so what would have been a better way? And she said, how about telling me that yes, we can get you an MRI, but I need to hear your side of the story and find out why you need this MRI. So I was intrigued and I kept listening. I said, okay, right, tell me. And we literally, that consultation was almost role play. I wasn't embarrassed. Something within me was like, just listen and learn. This was me as an ST1, my first rotation in GP land. So at the end of the consultation, of course, we made peace. She too agreed not to have that. And lo and behold, she told me she was a 50-year medical student. That's when I became embarrassed. But then I learned something. Yeah, I learned something important. And that has been with me even now as a GP. So why have I said this? It's a summary of what Oinye is saying. Have a conversation with your patients. Go two-way. Yeah, I saw a gentleman who came in, something as simple as, blood in sputum. And he was like, that last night he noticed blood hanging somewhere around his tonsil, then coughed and it came out. Everything was fine, but he looked very terrified. But of course, I picked up the cue. So I said, Mr. XYZ, I've listened to your story, but you look terrified about this. Tell me, why are you this worried? You see, that's me tapping into his emotions. Then he gave me that look and was like, this may sound embarrassing. I'm a big guy, I shouldn't be scared, but he went on Google. Then he saw stuff about tonsillar cancer, to lung cancer, to this cancer. So my mind was like, right, so this is his eyes, basically. His ideas, his concerns, and he didn't mention any expectations. So I just flipped it back and said, good, I'm happy you gave me a wonderful history. You've said this, you've said that, you've said that, you've said that. All these things don't point towards any of the cancers you've mentioned. But yep, I get your concerns. And we went further, had a chat. And before he left, he shook my hand and said, that's thank goodness. And he went on and said, you see, that's why we need doctors rather than running off to Google. So this is a patient literally giving me the pass mark. So these things seem hard, but we know these things. But yes, it's cultural differences. Yeah, it's cultural. Picture yourself leaving Lagos, traveling to Sokoto State in Nigeria. You'll be like fish out of water because you don't know the culture. You don't know how to speak to them. You may be terrified. You will see a lady in hijab. You'll be like, do I walk up to it and say hello, or do I talk to the man next to her? You'll be confused. Yeah, so it's a big thing, literally changing continents coming here. But then, like Ola and Henry and Onye have said, you have to start now. You have to equip yourself. And how do you equip yourself? Check the RCGP website. There's a lot, in fact, more than enough information there. That's one. Engage your colleagues. From this forum, we have, tonight we literally have 163 people. Yes, 2 have just logged out. That is insane. So that means you can even aggregate in little groups. Then, like Oinye has advised, mix with the locals. Have these conversations, practice with them. You will hear how they say things. The same thing, but you can flip it in different ways. From, oh, Mr. Obi, how can I help you today? Or Mr. Robi, I see from your notes, you've had an MRI, you've come in to discuss it. So you see different ways, rather than being formulaic and saying, Dr. Obi, what can I do for you? Then if the patient flips the conversation, you'll be lost. And that takes us back to what Dr. Henry has said. You need good medical knowledge. There is no way you can offer anyone options if you don't even know what's going on. Because remember, take for example, type 1 hypertension. They don't always need tablets. But if you only know, oh, I have to give Ramipril or this, and the patient says, look, GP, I was very big. I used to weigh XYZ stone. But since you told me about this, I've cut down. I don't drink anymore. I don't smoke anymore. I don't want tablets. You see, you'll be lost because you won't be able to offer something you don't have. So that's why it's important for us to have good knowledge about the exam. And I always advise my trainees, don't train yourself to be an exam passing machine. Train yourself to be a good GP because your patients will love you. That's what will also help you fight burnout. That's what will give your CV a big boost. That's what will make you a very marketable GP. You'll be the type of GP, you go on holiday and come back and your patients will be angry at you for going on holiday. Yeah, right, good. We've got time. I know we've done very well with time. So if we can spend the next 10, 15 minutes to ask our questions. So the floor is open. You can put your hand up and myself, Henry, Oinye, Ola, and any other person in the group can answer the questions as much as we can. Then after taking questions, we will just give a brief insight into what the next webinar will be. So yeah, put your hands up. We have our eyes on screen, looking out for who will ask the very first question.
Obi, can I start by saying something first? The cases that we have on the website, because that's another thing, you know how people, somebody will now go and watch all those cases and then think that is the gold standard, that has to be it. Just be aware, those cases don't necessarily mean that all those candidates would have passed. I think pay more attention to the questions and the topics for discussion. Yep. You know, when you're watching them with your group, just think about it. If you have the guide, there's no magic inside. The guide of what is passing and what is failing is all there. You know, just have a look at it and then use it to generate conversations amongst yourselves. But please don't go and copy it and think that is the main, that's the way everything has to be said, and start practicing like that. But Obi, thank you so much for your talk. That was really very inspirational.
Yeah. That's kind of you. Right, we have Chu. Chu has put his hand up first. Yeah. So if you can introduce yourself, then you ask your question and anyone amongst us will see if we can. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Franklin. I'm East of England, GP Training Institute. I was just, thanks a lot for this, actually. It's very helpful, very, very insightful. I wanted to ask 2 questions. One was about, what do you think about penning things down during the course of the consultation? In a reasonable way, obviously, but just trying to pen things down, you know, so that maybe sometimes you don't forget, especially if probably you have an expectation of the patient that you want to address later or all those things, just pen them down somewhere. And then the other question was, we talk about the golden minutes and the first, few minutes of consultation. I also believe that there might be cases where, the role players have also been, asked to play maybe timid or difficult, so you don't have the opportunity to have like an open conversation with the person because maybe they're anxious or one reason or the other, where you have to actually try to drag out questions. How do you kind of deal with that initial consultation, that phase where it seems like you now have to ask close questions because the patient is not just being, open? I think those are the two questions. Thanks.
Right. Maybe I answer. Yeah. So the first question is about writing while speaking with your patient. So find what works for you, but carry the patient along. Yes, I know some GPs do it. I've seen some GPs do it, but they do it brilliantly. So once you create rapport, one strategy is you politely tell the patient, I'm all ears, I'm listening to all you're saying, but sometimes I like to make notes about things which are very important to you. So don't say to as in you, as in the GP, the patient. So that will even get you some brownie points to the patient that, whoa, this one that I feel is very important, he's made note of it, and I will come back. But remember, don't focus on the paper. Same way for your computer, even if you want to check blood test results, don't focus on it. Listen to the patient, engage the patient. You are very intelligent. You've done your AKT, your brain wasn't wiped in those 3 hours. So there's no way you'll forget, but yes, I know some of us, it's habit. So you modify that habit. Even in consultation, I check, but I listen. And then I'm like, oh, right, you mentioned this, you mentioned that, you had this test in hospital, you had the scan. Shall we check? Sometimes I even invite them and say, right, oh, you have the CT. So it's just think about it. You and your mate in the pub having a chat. You don't literally look backwards and you say, right, keep talking, I'm listening. So engage. Yeah. So you make notes, then you pack it. Then when you come back, you're right, Mr. XYZ, you said this earlier and I made note of it. Is it what? And you carry on. So did that sort of answer the question before I move on to the second one?
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, then the second bit you mentioned, when yes, they may be calibrated to be anxious, to be timid, to be initially unfriendly. That is good. Now you've mentioned it. That means you've scaled one hurdle. You are picking up cues that this guy is timid, this guy is angry, this guy is frustrated. Then talk about it. There's this thing I like seeing in train stations. See it, say it, sort it. Whenever I'm in train station, it's always in my head. Like, I'm like, see it, say it, sort it. So you've seen it. Yeah, just tell the patient. You say, Henry, you look very anxious, but of course, you now tune your voice. You wouldn't sound very, lower your voice and you say, Dr. Henry, you look very anxious about this. Can you tell me why? Then he may now relax and you've gained this confidence. And he'll be like, look, I'm worried because this headache means I've been off work for 5 days and this is my last one. And, then you see you're opening up. You're already getting his ideas, concerns, and expectations. And if they're timid, think about the teenagers. They are looking at their thumbs. They don't look comfortable. Yeah, you buy their confidence by saying, right, you've said this, you've said that. That's actually wonderful. You've given me a lot of information. You give them credit. And then they sit up and in their mind, they're like, whoa, this guy who knows a lot actually thinks or knows that I know a lot as well because I'm the professional about my personal problem. Then they open up. So it's your job to gain your patient's confidence. And that starts from the way you talk to them, the way you look at them, the way you listen to them, the way you pay attention to whatever they are saying. Like Oinia has mentioned, whatever they're saying is valid, even when it's in quote medical nonsense, but then it's what they know. Their gray area is bigger than yours. You listen, absorb it, you break it down, say, right, you've come in thinking that, a few drops of blood from your nostril is nasal cancer, but I don't think so. Then you give them reasons from your conversation with them. You don't run off and start quoting 100 million papers, research papers, because that's you intimidating them, trying to, without saying it, look, you don't know anything, I'm the professional here. But when you bring it down, say, oh, but this thing only happens when you are in a very cold environment or you pick your nose. So you flip it back to them and they actually understand, oh yeah. And you're already training them to, don't pick your nostrils because when you pick it, you bleed. and then you get frightened that you think you have cancer. Yeah. So did that help at all? If not, someone else can chip in.
Yeah, very helpful as well. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. So we have Chukwuemeka. His hand has been up.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this presentation and these teachings. It's really an eye opener. I've learned a lot today. Sorry, I just have a question to ask. So you mentioned that the examination findings will be given. Okay, so we don't have to do examination. So I'm just wondering, how do you incorporate that into your consultation? Like, so if you're seeing the patient, you're doing your data gathering, you get to where you need to examine and it's already given. So how do you put it? How do you say it so that it doesn't look too like a robot, like you're being artificial or something?
Henry, you're still on mute. While you unmute yourself, I'm just going to quickly say it's there, the way it's written. But I think I have to say something here before I allow Henry to answer you. Just be aware that it's still a normal consultation. Okay, so it still follows the pattern of a normal consultation. So you do your data gathering, you ask your history, you examine the patient, and then you manage the patient. So still know at the back of your mind that examination is important. And if it's the one that you need to bring them in for them to have an examination, if it's necessary to do, then still say it. But chances are they would give you the exam finding. Anyway, let me let Henry answer the rest of it. Henry, over to you.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to use some examples that are already on the RCGP website. So the case examples. So there's one of a patient that has what sounds like gastroenteritis, probably now about to go into AKI. Now, in the case description, there's already district nurse went to see this patient. This is the blood pressure, the pulse, they felt the tummy, the abdomen is normal. So that's already in the case description. So it's now for you to now bring that into your management plan to say that the district nurse already did this. I'm reassured by that. Hence, I don't need to see you to do that again. This is what we're going to do based on that. So you bring in that examination finding. There's another case on somebody feeling tired all the time and being forgetful, not tired all the time. And then there was an element of lethargy. And the patient at some point threw our eyes in or expectation of wanting like an MMSC, something, a test of memory. And the doctor says, well, when I follow you up in the next couple of weeks, when we are going to discuss the results, we can do it then. So they still had to manage the patients. So what I'm saying is, if you ever need to examine, it can be one that can happen in another appointment, but it would not be so important that you have to delay your management until you do that exam. You will have more than enough information to be able to make a decision on that patient's management from what you're given already. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. So watch those sample cases, see how they use those examination findings, see what is already presented in the case, and then you get an idea of the sort of cases you're likely going to be getting in the exam.
And the other thing we tend to see sometimes, Henry, I don't know, I'm sure you would have seen it as well, is they'll give you the finding. They'll find a way, I can promise you that, of bringing in the exam finding. But then you see some candidate that'll say, oh, I know you saw the nurse yesterday and I can see here you've got all the tests, but I want to bring you in to do it myself. That means your relating to others will be going down because you don't trust your team. That's what you're trying to say to us, the examiners. Because remember, we now have GP assistants who we trust to be able to do the blood pressure and all that before we see the patient. So think to yourself, if you're wanting to do your own, do you trust your team? Are you relating well to your team? So like Henry said, if the exam is important, they have very wonderful ways of putting it in. unless it's not an exam that you need straight away to make your management plan, then you can then bring the patient or make an arrangement to do it at a later date.
So I think another thing is that if the examination findings they are positive for what you consider your diagnosis, you could bring them in. That okay, what appears to be happening is a water infection, but the good news in here is that your temperature is completely fine, your heart rate is not fast, so that tells me things are not as bad as we thought it might be. So you can bring a few positives there to justify your diagnosis as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Right, so yeah, we are still open for questions before we, slowly round up. Thank you everyone for being here. Yep.
There's one from Imelda. Imelda said, when she asks her patients about their eyes, most of them tend to say nothing. I'm not sure of anything. That's why I'm here. Then later on in the consultation, they end up revealing their eyes. Imelda, can I just reassure you? And you said you feel that you've noticed this in a particular demographic, but it's easier with the natives here. Yes, and it's also the way, A, it's the way you ask it, and B, quite frankly, some of them will push back and say something like, oh, but you're the doctor, you should know, and all that. And that is when you can bring in your signposting to just say, listen, I do get it, all of us get it. I think I've done this. I've been an examiner since 2013. When you hear this every day and every day and every day, it becomes the way you work. My patients know now. Some of them will say, before you ask me, look, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I want from you, Dr. Okonkwo. Can we just get on with it? Because they know that I will definitely ask them. So I think, honestly, I think you need to think about maybe the way you're asking it. Yeah, that is number one. And even if they say, okay, nothing, you can signpost and say, look, it's always good for me to understand what you're thinking, because that would help me to kind of channel what we agree to do together. Is there anything you've read or thought? But don't spend it, because that's the one we used to see in CSA. They can spend the whole consultation thinking there's a hidden agenda, and they will keep asking, so can you tell me your ideas? Can you tell me what, thinking that the role player is holding something, some golden thing that they don't want to release because they want you to fail. No, not at all. I think you need to just think about it, just video yourself and watch it. Maybe the way you're asking it, maybe it doesn't quite, it's not clear the way you're asking it. And then maybe you watching somebody else, seeing the way they say it might mean the difference between that person answering your question. And you don't even have to say it as a concern or an idea or whatever. You find your own words and your creative ways of getting the same information, but in a conversational way, because that is what makes that difference. Make it part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, even with eyes, they may not always be concerned, to be honest. Like last week, I met a young man to discuss his cholesterol when we were having a chat. Even at Mr. XYZ, you don't seem worried about this. And he had a good laugh and said, look, this is familial. And he knows stuff. He's not medical, but he knows. He told me how his, great-grandparents, that it's basically, they are known with high cholesterol, and none of them have ever suffered problems from it. So you see, he doesn't have any concerns. You see, and his idea, you can see the idea for him is, yes, I know I have elevated cholesterol, but this is our family problem. So you see, and his expectations were clearly, I don't want statins. Why? He's explained, this runs in our families, we live into old age. So I appreciate and we had a wonderful consultation. So without him saying it, he was basically saying, I appreciate the concerns. You guys are good GPs. You've done this, but just hang fire with and so that's the good thing about having knowledge and sharing management with your patients. Because me as the GP, yes, if I were to have my way, it's to give him atorvastatin. But I've listened to him. Everything he said made sense. So I was like, fine. And I switched to negotiate. And I said, okay, good. Now I'm confident, and you give him credit. I'm confident you know so much about cholesterol. You're taking good care of yourself. Your lifestyle is brilliant, but shall we agree to keep an eye on this? And he said, fine. And he said he was even the one who, volunteered. I said, I'll come back in 6 months to check again. And he chuckled and said, and I can bet my cholesterol will be almost same. But if he goes up, then yes, Dr. Obi, I will take the statin. That's the agreement we had. And we shook hands. He was happy. I was happy. He left. Yeah. So remember, in real life, yes, as much as you say ideas, concerns, and expectations, it mustn't be something negative. It can be positive because our patients know stuff as well. Picture yourself, you're very well trained. If you go see your GP, yeah, you know a lot of stuff. Or maybe you happen to know about cars. If you take your cars to the engineer, you may end up having a nice two-way conversation with the engineers there because you happen to know about cars. It may be your hobby, maybe something you look into. So it's all about strategy, practicing, learning, watching others say it, then fine-tuning it to your own words, the way that makes you comfortable, the way to get patients to tell you stuff. Because asking, oh, what are your ideas? It can be frightening. The patient may even become defensive. Oh, this guy thinks I'm here with an agenda. And they freeze and they won't tell you. But when you're having a chat, to be honest, and some may not even have any idea about anything. All they know is that my neighbor came in because of hypertension. So let me come in and see what I get from this consultation. Yeah. So it's more about practice.
Yeah, can I also add that I understand some consultation models teach that that ideas, concerns, and expectations should be taken early on. I think one of the reasons why a patient is likely to say, I don't know, is that you've not got to know them enough. You've not harmed yourself with enough information, because the way to get a positive out of it is reflective in nature. Oh, you said this. Oh, you said it's been 4 weeks that this has been going on. And you also mentioned that you live with your family. So I wonder, what are your thoughts as to what you think is happening here? Why? You're likely to get a positive answer because you've reflected on what you have gathered. And the second thing is, like Dr. Onyi mentioned, how you say it matters a lot. So what I did at my time is I learned a lot of phrases, and training candidates for SCA I train my candidates to learn a lot of phrases in saying different components, but at the same time, not coming across as formulaic, at the same time, adding that trick to it, such that the patient will answer the question without even thinking about it. Oh, you said you've had a look on the internet about this. I wonder what Dr. Google thinks about this. Oh, I can see you've mentioned your family, you've mentioned, oh, it may be something bad, but I wonder what in specific worries you here. If you were in my shoes, what would you like me to do for you? What would you be doing if you were seeing you? So I'm likely to get a negative if I say, oh, so what are your ideas? Oh, so what are your concerns? So what are your expectations? So we must and it's an individualized thing. We must develop tricky ways of slickly answering these questions without being caught. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Right. So I think we should call it a night. Thank you so much to everybody. The last people standing are 146, which is very exciting. It shows we've done something useful from 165, and we still have 146, 1 hour, 15 minutes into, i.e. we've gone, I think, 15 minutes beyond. So this, like we said earlier, is just part 1. It's a taster, it's a teaser. I think part 2 will come. Part 2 will be more of yeah, let me pull it up. I think I've made notes on. So part 2 will be a continuation, but it will be more of consultation skills. what do we think? Because if you don't have good consultation skills, you can't scale the SCA. In fact, you can't even be a good trainee. Of course, you have to have good consultation skills. Then you keep learning, then get to the SCA and pass the exam. So does it sound reasonable for the next webinar to be consultation skills for ST1, ST2 upwards? What do we say? Everyone is now mute. Do I drop a pin?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So Dr. Henry and Dr. Enye have given a brilliant, so they've sort of took over from where I last started from, and they've sort of given us a taster into, consultation skills. So I'll suggest, of course, everyone has to, say yes or no to that. Maybe the next one I'm thinking, of course, we've heard what they've said. We'll go home. I'll watch the, YouTube link. I'll watch this again to digest it, because as a trainer, I have to know stuff to be able to help someone else. Yeah, so I'll go home, digest it. But I think the next one, we will probably start by role play, do a consultation, 15-minute consultation role play. Then, based on what we've learned today, we expand further so we can see how we put these things in practice, because I know it's always easier said than done to, ask it this way, ask it that way. But I think the next one, if we have the first 15 minutes GP patient consultation, then we leave the floor open. People will say what they've observed. Then, yeah, we take things from there. So how does that sound to everyone?
I think that's good.
All right, perfect.
That sounds fine.
Perfect. So yeah, we will draft it. I know the summer holidays are upon us. Those who've got kids or family, even those who don't, make the most of it. Don't make your Microsoft Office screen be your holiday destination. You can either go there in person or just go outside, relax. Yeah, meet people, talk to people, have time to relax, because it's very important as well, as we work very hard to also try to relax very hard. Yeah, while we learn, because that's all good for our well-being. As you're taking care of your academic knowledge, you take care of your body physically by exercising, relaxing, and all that. So yeah, as we go on in the group, the Telegram handle, we will, in good time, give notification, a poster, and then a link for the next one for next month. Thank you so much, everyone. Any last contributions before we say good night and then move on to other things and get ready for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I've added the link to the LCGP trainers webinar for someone, for anyone who wants to go through it. The link is on the message.
Right. So someone has said there's, okay, yeah, fine. Anyone who can leave now, that's fine. I see some people raising, there's a Telegram handle. Yeah. So I will see how I can post it on here and invite folks. Yeah. So yeah, anyone who's can, call it a night while I stay on and try to get folks who are unaware that we have a Telegram handle. So I'll see how I can share it. So you can click. Right, I'll do that on my phone.
I'm just going to say bye to everyone. I need to leave now. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Obi, I think I've posted the link in the group, the joining link.